Hello there, Steve here in Sydney of the Lay Gnosis website truebluehealer.com, where you can get immediate physical evidence of the activation of your divine spark in just 20 minutes. And that'll be followed by vivid messaging dreams within about a week, and later on an internal mentoring voice some months into the future that will come. And it's a sleigh ride through a magic forest, I promise you, and you will come to discover the real you that you are meant to be. Now, that's enough of that. Today I want to talk about the burgeoning debt crisis in America and how it got there. March 15, there's Obama's raised debt ceiling comes to an end on March 15, and the US government runs out of money. It's got about 200 billion cash left, and there's a problem with that. You can't just keep raising the debt ceiling, getting into more and more debt to run a government that's run out of money a long time ago. The US debt at the moment is about $20 trillion. Barack Obama, what did he do? He doubled the debt of all previous presidents. It's quite an achievement for a man obviously out to destroy America, and he's brought the American empire very close to its end, basically. And that's the whole idea. He's a Marxist Muslim, wants to destroy America and destroy everything like Marxists always do, and jihadis do it too, Muslims do it too, because they see everything around them as evil, requiring destruction. Marxism and Muslim fanaticism, Muslim nihilism seem remarkably similar, and Obama has done tremendous damage to the American empire. By the way, I'm not down on America. I think it's a wonderful place. They're still about the only country in the world that produces helicopters, light aircraft. Their computer chips are still copied by the Japanese. So they have a unique kind of creativity, and I still think they've got a future, but they've got to change their attitude from being far right wing. And for that we go back to Europe 500 years ago. Germany. You've heard about the great long river Rhine that runs from Hungary all the way through Germany and that sort of thing. You've also seen those fairy tale castles on the Rhine that you can go and visit today. Well, they may look fairy tale in those beautiful mountain fortress photographs against the winding Rhine River, but what they were doing 400 and 500 years ago, they used to sight artillery across the river, and commercial shipping was required to pay a tax just to safely get past the artillery. These people were called Raubritter, which translates into English as robber baron. And that long string of river produced a long string of robber barons that basically stole from everybody passing, and produced the modern corporate world we have today. Robber barons exist today. They're bigger and smarter than ever before, more ferocious, and they believe in, as we know, the American dream is that all profits should be privatised, go entirely to private investors, shareholders, and any losses they take should be socialised, paid for by the taxpayer. They have a right to be subsidised by the taxpayer, don't they? Of course they do. So we had Chrysler, GM and all that getting many, many hundreds of billions in 2008 to help them out because they were too big to fail. By the way, the too big to fail thing also occurred in the 18th century with the British East India Company. It had to be bailed out because it was too big to fail, too many ramifications of its going bankrupt, you see. So it's not the first time this has happened. Now, I'm going to suggest a partial solution to the debt crisis in America today. The debt crisis in America is basically caused by its military-industrial complex, which has been pumped up artificially by what's called military Keynesianism, where you keep feeding taxpayers' money in to subsidise companies like General Dynamics and Boeing and all those companies, Hughes Aircraft and that sort of thing, and the Chrysler who make the M1 tank and everything. They get massive government subsidies to produce the latest weapons. And then when you've got all this wonderful array of weapons, you have to use them all the time because you make a lot more money when you have a lot of weapons if you keep wasting all the munitions and the equipment and continually upgrading things. So the military-industrial complex of America is artificial. They should really somehow try and convert to a peacetime economy, but I can't see them doing it because Americans love their military, they cheer them on, they have their military parades. It's deeply ingrained in even the common people's mindset. I'll just give you an example of the scale of things. Russia has a single overseas base today. America's got 800. Can they really afford to do that? I suspect not, and they may have to shrink their global presence, but I'm not really in favour of America going all the way to being isolationist. I don't think with other rising powers, superpowers to come, I don't think we can afford to let America shrink back into isolationism. So what's the solution? I don't think Donald Trump will be very interested in boosting the debt ceiling again, another couple of $100 billion, and take it over the 20 trillion mark. That's got to be paid back and can never be paid back as the current payments are organised. Can you keep producing war after war after war, such as in the last 15 years, bombing the Middle East into the Stone Age and making everything worse, but making military-industrial complex shareholders fabulously rich? Because every time you drop a bomb, there's a dividend paid to a shareholder in America. Every time you fire a bullet, a dividend goes to shareholders in America. So we had the strange thing that we had in Vietnam, where it was finally calculated that to kill one enemy Viet Cong, it cost $1 million to the US government, the taxpayer. A side effect of the lack of money, they just couldn't get enough money, was that in Vietnam they started shipping drugs home to America inside the coffins of dead American soldiers because they needed the money, you see. That's one of the corruption things that came out of having robber barons running your economy, okay, running big companies. They haven't changed. They haven't changed a bit, right? So now what's the partial solution I'm suggesting to you? Well, it sort of goes like this. Taxpayers' money is used to fund black budgets producing super weapons and stuff like that, so that to destroy a house with 3 insurgents in it, you might use a $50 million guided missile, right? It doesn't seem right. It's disproportionate waste of money. But that money actually lands in the pockets of shareholders when the missile is replaced. So it's a huge financial boost to a handful of people in the military-industrial complex. Now, you can't make, and we know this is popular, this is current, you can't make big corporations pay taxes. Hillary Clinton doesn't pay tax, neither does Donald Trump. There's loopholes for everybody in America to avoid paying tax if you're a big corporation. Paying taxes is only for the little defenceless wage earners, you see. So what can we do? There's an answer staring us in the face. If corporations can avoid tax, and so can the big-time shareholders, there's a solution to that. It's really quite simple, but probably anathema to Americans who are so obsessed with right-wing thinking, economically at least. And it goes like this. Donald Trump could just buy into or seize or nationalise, say 25% of General Dynamics, owning all the shares, that is, 25% of the shares, so that the government gets a dividend back to the taxpayer's pocket to pay off the $20 trillion debt. All you'd have to do is bomb about another 30 countries into the Stone Age. And Americans seem to enjoy doing that. I'm critical of them in a satirical sort of way. There's still plenty of threats to so-called freedom that we cherish so much. But I'm suggesting that the military-industrial complex should be partially nationalised, say 20-25%, think of a number, economists can figure it out, so that when the profits come back from firing off munitions, some of the profits come back to the taxpayer and pay off the $20 trillion debt. Now, I know that's going to be virtually impossible, but I think you've really got to be more elastic in your thinking rather than just raising the debt ceiling, which will only compound the problem of having a war economy since 1950 something. So I don't think it's going to be implemented. It won't occur to right-wing thinking politicians. But I think the neocons have had it far too good. The holiday is over, the carnival is over, unless they radically distribute some profits back to the taxpayer. You can't just have the taxpayer forking out for all these glorious wars that the neocons want, which actually mess up the geopolitical situation. And weaken America. While ever you have the wrong cash flow, you just got to divert some of the profits of this massive military effort back to the government. What's wrong with that? It sounds to me like a little bit of justice. A little bit of justice. Can we inject a bit of justice into the economic and financial disaster to try and put it back on its feet? So what do you think about that, gang? Would you like to say something about that? There's another problem. If you say you could tax Google and Apple and force them to make profits, force them to pay taxes, right? What's going to happen? Well, the general solution is it's very hard to tax corporations because they just raise the price of their products to cover the tax loss so that the poor suffering consumer pays the taxes the corporation should be paying themselves. That's why a better solution is to partially nationalise Google, make them partially government owned, similarly Apple, and I think it's capitalism gone mad, gone too far, gone to extremes. It's got to be reined in and restored to a mixed economy. And I know you can game that system too. You can get excessive government subsidy and hide the money somewhere and put it into CIA black projects and all that sort of stuff. Any system can be gamed, but there's going to be a big need for another source of income around March 15. And if the American empire wants to keep going and make America great again, it's got to start dividing the profits of the military-industrial complex and provide a tributary, quite a big tributary of profit back into the taxpayer's pocket, as you were. So that is my suggestion for the problem looming in March the 15th, okay, for Donald Trump. Otherwise, his presidency will not be able to do anything. There'll be no infrastructure rebuilds, there'll be no repairs, no massive boost of military spending, forget that. It's going to actually be a contraction of military spending. So what he says and what he does can be quite different, and what he does can be secretly changed. What's announced, what actually happens. In case you don't know, the CIA is paid secretly out of the Navy paycheck. I think it's $40 billion a year, goes to the CIA to basically spy on every American for some very dubious reasons. The benefits to America of the Navy pumping black money, $40 billion a year, into the intelligence community, the benefits of that are highly dubious. And JFK wanted to break the CIA into 1,000 pieces. Trump has mouthed sentiments to that same effect. He's moderated that since he's had things explained to him that he would have a tiger by the tail if he tries to downsize the CIA. So he's threatened, basically. But there's options open there where you can nationalise some of these companies and tell them this is the only way you're going to survive and keep ripping off the taxpayer by giving some money back to the US taxpayer via partial nationalisation. Okay, so give me your thoughts below this video. Tell me what you think. Can you think of a better scheme? It's going to be a balancing act between corporations raising their prices to pay what seems to be more shareholders, but there's always a compromise, and you've got to stack one thing against the other to get an outcome that suits the taxpayer. Otherwise, the American war machine stops. Just imagine if we had an American peace machine. It would make a lot less profit, by the way. The profits in warfare go up 10 to 20 times. That's thousands of %. So you can see why war's a very attractive option for corporations. So, but there's enough money spent in America on the weapons spending. I mean, they spend 9 times more than Japan, which is the second highest military spending. 9 times more than Japan. America's got 8,000 tanks on its mainland. I don't know who they're going to fight on the mainland. I don't know. Perhaps the Eskimos, perhaps the Alaskans. What about the Mexicans? Now, Mexico hasn't been bombed yet. Could calculate how much money you can make by bombing Mexico into the Stone Age. That's a fascinating concept, isn't it? Have they done South America yet? Well, let's see. I'm being a little bit satirical here. It is tongue-in-cheek. But if they want to keep this forward imperialistic policy toward the world, they've got to change the way they keep the taxpayer funding them. They've got to start getting some money back. And I think partial nationalisation is a partial solution and should be seriously considered. Steve here in Sydney, over and out.